takes me a minute to get the live stream.
Okay, that's fine.
going.
Sorry about that, Brian.
That's okay.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. This is great. Let's get it. I appreciate you sharing. Oh, yeah. I got slow. Oh, take it. No.
Well, you said you can get Bradley to fix it. Yeah, it's like 3 minutes off.
Here. Oh, that's yours. Thank you. That's yours. That's, thank you. A necessity out of it.
Oh, heavens, yes. Well, not only do I need this to keep my nervous system going, it's warm.
It's warm.
Yeah.
So, Ron, we've got John's on the line.
Oh, wonderful. Good.
Rolling, and Michelle's on, but driving. So,
Oh, that's dangerous.
so yeah, that's, and we're trying out a little bit of new technology. As you can see, we've got up here on the screen, we've got, those are actually the participants. So you can see Steve and Mark. He's going to be doing a presentation here in a second.
Terrific.
They can see us. So you can see that middle picture.
Sure.
Has a picture of the boardroom so they can kind of see what we're up to.
Yeah.
And so, John, thanks for indulging us. I think we could probably get going.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, we hope our board chair is using hands-free telephone service. Is that correct, Michelle?
I am actually. Thank you guys.
Okay, and welcome to the meeting, everyone. This is the Finance and Audit Committee of Mid-Continent Public Library, and I'll call the meeting to order and ask that Teresa do the roll call.
Okay, in terms of roll call, we've got John Laney, Steve Rowling, Michelle Wyckoff, Ronald Thies, and we're waiting for Charlotte. So everyone is here. Okay.
Oh, Charlotte's on
Oh,
the,
Charlotte, you're here?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. We see you. Hi, Charlotte. Awesome.
Okay,
So
Charlotte,
we have-
Charlotte's
Yeah.
on the phone.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we have
Everyone's-
unanimous. We have unanimous membership.
Yes.
All right. You've seen the agenda. You now have it before you. And I'd like a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
So moved. A second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, we're in session, and we'd like to review the minutes of the November 2020 meeting. I almost hate to call the name 2020, but that's past now, and we're in better times, we hope. So let's take a look at the minutes. I hope you've had an opportunity to review them. So I have, and find that they're quite adequate to cover the items that we considered in November. But other members may have suggestions for changes or other comments about the agenda. Are there any? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
The minutes.
I'm sorry. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
That's
Sorry.
okay. That's fine.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Okay, it's been moved and second.
Yep. Whatever.
Okay.
Whoever.
yeah.
Okay.
Michelle's rolling.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes of November, say aye.
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 Okay. Are there any opposed? All right, hearing none, we will consider the minutes of November approved, and we'll move on to the business of today. The first item is entitled Residential Development Presentation. In a moment, we'll introduce I presume that Mark Abbott from Polsinelli Law Firm is ready to make a presentation. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
that's correct. That's correct, John.
All right, just a word or two of background on this. The commit we've had many discussions over the last 15 years concerning tax increment financing and its impact on the library and its impact on other taxing authorities and what our position should be. I think we started out many years ago with a strong, we're opposed to it all position. In the intervening years, we've modified that to recognize that there are some tax increment financing developments that are worthwhile in the public, from a public good standpoint, and that we ought to consider them on a case-by-case basis. So that's what we've been doing. We have had a fairly strict policy in the board policy that was carefully reviewed and voted upon and approved by the board that we would, in general terms, be opposed to tax increment financing for residential projects. I think we have to keep in mind that that is our policy, and if we were to do something, we would be making an exception to a policy. But having said that, I think we concluded that this project that is being proposed and that we'll hear about in a moment was worthy of at least our hearing out the project and then making a decision as to how we would want to, what position we would want to take as a board, and what position would our Finance Committee want to take as a recommendation to the board regarding this proposal. So with that, unless Steve has comments, I would introduce Mark Abbott and ask that he present the development which he is proposing.
John, I have nothing really additional to add. Just in terms of specificity, the policy that John referred to is Board Policy 522 on tax abatement, which basically says, as John mentioned, that the library opposes projects that that will increase demand for library services, which that was terminology that we used essentially to mean residential projects. There is a second paragraph that says individual developers who wish may present their need and situation to the MCPL Board of Trustees or appropriate subcommittee for consideration by the full board, which that's exactly what's happening right now. Mr. Abbott and I've spoken a couple of times about this project, and we've also had a joint conversation with Terry Ward, representing the North Kansas City School District, which the North Kansas City School District is the school district in which this project sets, and spoke. That was the last conversation that we had, and should mention North Kansas City School District is on record for supporting this project already. So with that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Mr. Abbott.
Thank you very much, board members. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you this morning. First, a couple introductions. We are the attorney for a joint venture developer with Opus Development. The local developer, Devin White, is on this morning. And then there is the joint venture equity partner in the development. Jason White and Tom Callahan are on also this morning. So if there's any specific questions to the developer that I am not able to answer about the project, the rest of the team is on board. Again, thank you very much for letting us come and discuss the project with you. We are certainly aware of the board's policy and the hesitancy regarding residential development and abatement, and kind of tax increment financing in the layman's terms does mean tax abatement, tax credits. In this case, slightly different program, but yes, that is what we are requesting, is to pay something less than 100% of the real property taxes that would be assessed against the project. There are, on the board's policy, our understanding is there have been 2 instances in the past when, and what we would ultimately be requesting, ideally support for the incentive request. We would also fully welcome a position of just no position, and as opposed to being on the record as opposing the incentive request. There have been a couple instances in the past when the board has considered 2 other residential projects, and admittedly, we do not fit into those fact patterns because those there was no net loss on those previous projects over in John Knox and up north in Excelsior Springs. So while there have been 2 instances in the past, my understanding, where the board has come out with a position of we have no position on this incentive request, we do not fit into those same fact patterns. What we are requesting to do, if I'm not sure if that's Steve or the person in control of the PowerPoint can start flipping through.
Yeah, I'm not, Mark, this is Brian. If you could just tell me what slide I need to be on, I can start, and just say next slide when you're ready to go to the next slide. I can do that, so.
Got it.
Yes.
So if you, yep. So with this being number 1, and then I'll just give further instructions for next slide. This is a location in Briarcliff. It is on the south side of the highway. It is the lone remaining large undeveloped parcel. This parcel has remained undeveloped for 30 years. That Briarcliff area was subject it was included as part of an approved TIF plan that all of the other parcels were able to be developed except for this one. It turns out that this site was the dumping ground for all of the fill that came out of the Power and Light development in downtown Kansas City. Whether or not that created issues and scared off previous developers for trying to develop on the site, we are far enough along in the process where we fully understand the additional costs of the unstable fill, and although it was attempted to be a controlled fill, you can't control who comes in the middle of the night and starts dumping on the property, and there is significant soil issues that we are trying to solve for, and that is one of the primary driving forces for the request for abatement, to cover that development gap and to put some facility on this property that will generate taxes for the taxing jurisdictions. So that is just a depiction of a rendering of what the finished product would like. Next slide, please. So this is where the project would be located. Highway 9, we're in the red circled areas. Briarcliff up on the hill to the north, and then Senior to the east, and some other apartments, existing apartments to the south. And next slide, please. And again, just some more renderings of, we have had significant conversations with the Briarcliff developer. They have had significant input on the design that they are going to require. So we fit in with the rest of the neighborhood, with the rest of the Briarcliff development, with the design aesthetic, and keeps with the quality of the product that is already there. Next slide, please. Again, similar renderings, and then on to the next slide also gives a little more detail on what type of finish there would actually be. Next slide. This is an aerial showing the lot layout of what it would look like on the larger parcel in the middle on the south side. There would be the essentially the 4-story apartment multifamily unit there on the north end, parking to the south, and then on the parcel to the northeast, a 3-story multifamily facility. We are looking at approximately 254, I believe, units total. And next slide, please. And please feel free to interrupt if there's any questions, clarification at any point in time.
Regarding the fill, I assume that studies have been done about the type of material that's in the fill, and there is some certainty concerning matters that were dumped there that would be injurious to people if they were exposed.
As far as pollutants, yes, the bigger issue is just the quality of the fill and the stability of the fill and being able to build on top of that, whether or not there are larger pieces of construction debris, whether or not there are voids. That creates the bigger issue. But the issue of pollutants and recognized environmental conditions coming up in phase 1 and those types of things, those are certainly being addressed as well, and those would be addressed during the construction process. But it's just being able to build in the first place on unstable fill is the more costly issue for us right now.
Okay, thank you.
So this is the sources and uses. We are estimating for the 254 units, a $54 million project. We would be putting in 40% equity. With that amount of equity, we fully anticipate there would be a ready market of lenders. So financing as far as being able to obtain a construction loan, and if we are able to come to an agreement with the taxing jurisdictions and get the incentives approved, financing is on the lower end of our list of concerns. And next slide, please. So here's where we come to, I'm scrolling along on my own computer too, so I can see what's coming up. These are our incentive projections based on the comparable multifamily units in the Clay County, Clay County market, Clay County, based on our construction costs, what we anticipate the appraised value would be, what the county would assign as an assessed value, what the property taxes would be that would be generated, and then based on the incentive levels that we are requesting, what would be the savings to the development and what would be the taxes actually being paid out and retained by the taxing jurisdictions. So this just shows the assumptions of project costs, what the mill levy rates are, and just the basics to actually generate the next slide, which is kind of the meat of the ask. So this is the incentive request. In today's day and age, coming in with a request for 100% abatement for 20 years for what would be the maximum request, we think is not fair to the taxing jurisdictions. 2, we think it's not a realistic request in today's political environment of the public discourse that is occurring on abatement. And 2, not just the, with the schools being one of the, property taxes being one of the primary revenue sources or the primary revenue source for the public schools, it puts them at a significant disadvantage of not being able to cover their cost for new students when the abatement levels are too high. That was one of the things that we came, when we first had our discussion, we had the discussion first with North Kansas City Schools, and then the conversation with Steve took place after that. North Kansas City, they did kind of the same reservations as the library board's policy of not generally being in favor of abatement for residential projects. they very thankfully and somewhat surprisingly viewed this as making lemons out of lemonades. We have a problem site where nothing has occurred. Everything has been developed around this site. There are issues with this site, and if some assistance is not provided, it is likely this site will sit undeveloped with nothing happening for the extended future. In this case, it is a 15-year term with during years 1 through 8, 65% of the taxes would be abated. So 35% of the property taxes that would otherwise be due would still be paid out to the taxing jurisdictions. And then in years 9 through 15, that 65% rate decreases 5% and then 10% each year through the 15th year. So it is front loaded to help with the initial construction costs, and when we are doing the initial lease up where revenues are not as strong as opposed to the later years when occupancy is full. So that is the, we had a slightly different abatement levels and abatement term that North Kansas City Schools actually came back and shortened our term to 15 years. And this is what Terry Ward as kind of and their CFO Matt Fritz as the staff members took to the board with the recommendation of approval, and North Kansas City Schools actually voted in favor of supporting this incentive request. And next slide. Excuse me. So this shows the mix of units that would be provided there in the top left, kind of some of what the rent values would be. The big thing that would be one of the benefits to the community is when you go through, and this is a Port Kansas City incentive request, when you go through the port, they require that a certain percentage of the units be available, be made more affordable so that we are not able to charge market rents for those units. And we are agreeing to that. We would agree to that as part of this incentive approval, that 15% of the units we would be capped at 70% of AMI for the max rent for those units. So not only would we be developing a facility on a site that has significant soil issues, additional costs associated there, but we would be providing more affordable housing for the citizens in the community. And next slide. And the incentive request is actually for 15 years. This 10-year pro forma is more a function of the port requires that we provide a 10-year pro forma. So just to comply with that, that's just the distinction between the two. This page shows what the project of the expected rate of return to the developer without incentives. And if you want to just make it an easy comparison, bottom left-hand corner, we're looking at a 5.7% return. And then if you go to the next slide, just comparing a 6.3% return. In evaluating these types of projects, a 6% internal rate of return is typically seen as the floor for what is an acceptable risk to continue with the project. So with the incentives, if they were approved, we would not be significantly over what our bare minimum floor is that we typically use on projects. So again, we thank you for the opportunity to discuss the project. We think it is a unique site. It has unique development, additional costs and issues. We very much want to be partners in the community. We do not want to come in and request 100% abatement for the max term. We wanted to come up with something that the taxing jurisdictions that receive the majority of their funding from property taxes would be able to live with, that they could see that we were trying to be good community partners. We are going to be creating affordable housing in the community. And again, the best outcome for us presenting to this committee today would be a finding and support. That would be, from my understanding, something that has not occurred from this board before. We would also welcome just a position of, we are not going to publicly oppose this incentive request. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, or turn it back over.
Mark?
Yes.
Mark, hi. This is Ron at the headquarters room. I just had a question. When does the excuse me, remove my mask. When does year one start? Upon completion of the project and acceptance by Platte County, or initiating an aggressive marketing program, or just when?
Yep. So we actually get year 0 is actually our construction year. So based on when we actually start construction and when we would, because with the county, the assessed value is determined as of January 1st. So
Right.
whichever year Clay County, we hit our 100% value, that's the year it would start. So during the construction years, if there is a partial assessment during those years, the abatement would not start until we hit our 100%. And then, so essentially project completion is the easiest way to say that.
And it's expected to be completed prior to the assessment date, January 1st, whatever.
Yeah. Sometimes if a project is substantially, say 80% complete on January 1st, but that it's not going to be fully complete until April, sometimes counties have come in and assigned a partial value, and the taxes would be due on that. But until the year where we have 100% completion and 100% of whatever our max appraised and assessed value would be, that January 1st would be the year in which the.
Okay, and just another question, completely personal, unrelated to this, but I noticed that there's a kind of like an aesthetic union by like McCrite and some of the other facilities in that area. Was there any consideration to that? Again, this is just curiosity.
Yeah, one of the requirements when we signed up with Briarcliff, who is the seller, was that they have approval rights for our design materials and the overall building layout. I'm not saying that we would have done something material different from what was already there. We wouldn't want to create something that stood out like a sore thumb, but our design guidelines were steered very much by the existing developer.
I suspected that when I saw the visuals here.
Yeah, it turned out that it was okay. You never like someone else being able to tell you how you're able to design, but we're satisfied with the end result.
Thank you.
Mark, this is Steve Rowling. My eyes can't read the numbers very well on the screen. So in year X, how much money will our library district receive to start with? Once the first year, we'll start receiving money.
Yep.
And how much?
We could give you a slide that shows that. If you go up to slide 9 with the title Preliminary Incentive Request Pro Forma. Yes, that one right there. That shows the value of abatement, and then we could break that out to show, if you go to the slide right above that, that shows all the mill levies there, the middle on the right. So we could break out and show what percentage based on those mill levies, actually the dollar amount that would come to the library. That's a 15-second calculation. But right now it is just the next slide down just shows the aggregate, not broken out by specific taxing jurisdiction.
I still can't read that, unfortunately. So give me some ballpark numbers, if you would, please.
Oh, sure. So say in year one, when the project is completed, we're looking at an approximately $5.7 million assessed value. The total property taxes due would be $501,000. We would have to pay a pilot, which would be distributed to all the taxing jurisdictions, as split up by their mill levies, of $175,000. So that would equal a 35% tax payment to all the taxing jurisdictions. And then the value of the abatement after we pay our port fees, just as the cost of obtaining the approval, would be about $314,000. So in the first year, our savings would be $314,000. Our taxes paid to all the jurisdictions would be $175,000.
And Mark, if I could interject just a second, Steve, where this is different is that most often with most projects like this, instead of the abatement level being 65%, it would be 100% on year one. And in this case, it's 65% for year 1 to 8, and then 60% in year 9, 65% in year 10, incrementing all the way down to only a 10% abatement in year 15. So that's the part that's unique, that we typically don't see this sort of graduated schedule at all.
So Steve, what's your estimate of how much we receive kind of on year one?
Yeah, I'm going to have Quan do that math real quick while we're still talking. Quan, could you do that? Figure out what our percentage of the total levy is from page 19.
But I'm assuming the year one, the assessed valuation is about $4 or $5 million.
About $5 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So our tax rate, we still use 40 cents. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Quan's going to do that math real
Some
quick.
ballpark number, yeah.
And believe me, you want Quan to do that math. You don't want me to.
I just make sure, yeah. So maybe around $20,000,
About $20,000.
maybe, yeah.
Okay.
This is John Laney. I'm sorry, I lost contact here for a while, and I'm back online. I do have a question about that follows up on what the response that was just given, and that is, if nothing were done, and maybe you've already talked about this, but if nothing were done and the property was left as is, what is the amount of taxes that is totally paid on that property in its current condition, pre-development?
Yeah, so, and I have my associate here in the office, Joe. It looks like our base assessed values on all the property right now are $148,000. So the taxes due on $148,000 is what is being generated right now. So
Maybe a little below $600.
Yeah.
so $600 a year.
Okay, so $600 a year is what the library, roughly what the library is receiving now in taxes. And if it were to be developed along the lines that you talked about, why that would go up to about $20,000. Is that correct?
Back of the envelope estimates. Yeah, John.
Yeah, right. These are very rough estimates, I understand. I just wanted to get an idea of the order of magnitude there. So Thank you.
And I
Other
would
questions?
add that that's $20,000 for the first 8 years, then increasing in percentage as our benefit percentage decreases during the latter half.
Correct. I have one other question. On the affordable units, what would be the amount paid? Roughly speaking, what would be the rent on the affordable units?
Yep. So if you want to scroll down, I believe that is the next slide, correct? Again, small print, bottom left-hand corner. That shows there's 3 sets of columns. Well, they're the unit description on the left, and then 2 sets, 3 columns each. So the last 3 columns shows the units, the number that would be studio units, the number that would be affordable studio units. And again, all of our affordable units, we are not restricting those to just the smallest units. We are making it an even split. Well, I shouldn't say number even, but a reasonable split of affordable units, 1-bedroom units, 2-bedroom units, so that the affordable units are spread amongst all the unit types. But that shows the difference in costs. Our studio units actually don't change because the market won't support anything above what is actually 70% of AMI anyway. But our 1-bedroom units, for example, the market rate is $1,340. The affordable 1-bedroom units are $1,128, so approximately $200 cheaper.
Okay, thank you. That's sufficient.
Mark?
Yes.
Mark?
Correct.
Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
Mark, this is Ron again. I have a question for you. Of the 256 units, and I apologize, I know this is an unfair question, but is there any reasonable anticipation of the actual occupancy, adults, kids, just bottom line number of residents?
So this was one of the questions that we addressed with North Kansas City, with their primary issue being how many new kids are coming to the district. We have, just as Pulcinelli, we have worked on other projects where there were more townhomes that were going to be geared more towards families with children. This type of apartment product with this mix of units is not going to have as high a percentage of new families with young students. It's going to be more younger professionals. It's going to be adults without children. Devin, Tom, or Jason, if you have any of those numbers, we could provide them, but I don't think we have, an estimate of the 256 units, X number are going to be school-age kids. I just know that from this mix of units, that is not going to be the primary type of tenant at this facility.
Okay, the thought process I had would be the anticipated increase of persons renting. If we can extrapolate that by the saturation the libraries have, to me, it doesn't seem as if there's going to be an additional burden primarily to Platte City or the Riverside branches. So that's where I'm coming from. So would you estimate what, 450 to 550, something like that, total residents? Is that realistic?
Devin, does that sound reasonable to you?
Okay.
256 units, 450?
I guess where I'm coming from would be the potential, in quotes, loss of revenues versus responsibilities and costs to those 2 branches in particular. And bottom line is, I think what I'm hearing is good news.
Okay. And we would be happy to run numbers if it turns out that 450 total residents, from our calculations was a reasonable number, and you were able to, and we could share information with you of hearing, well, if there's going to be 450 new people, that's actually X dollars per head costs to the library. And if our incentive projections and the 35% payment coming to you doesn't cover that, and we need to have further discussions, we could.
No, that's we have a statistician here who is absolutely phenomenal, and we're in good shape, I think.
Good.
It's
Very
not
good.
necessary to do that.
Very good.
Okay, other questions? Okay, we thank you very much for your presentation and the time, and it's very thorough. And we will discuss this and give you an answer as soon as possible.
Could I clarify one thing? So we are required to report back to the Port KC the results of these types of discussions. For the library's internal processes to come to a position, is that something that the finance committee would talk internally after this and come up with a position, or does the finance committee then need to report to the board and the board determines the position? Just trying to get some type of feel, not locking you into an official date, but just some type of feel for what we can relay to Port as to when we might receive some information.
John, I'm happy to answer that. In terms of process, the committees of the board are advisory committees, and so they scrutinize and they kick the tires and they try to, and then they will advise the full board. But individual committees do not have any individual authority in and of themselves. The best they can do is make a full recommendation to the board. So even today, the committee is going to have a conversation about this, and they will decide what sort of recommendation they want to make, or no recommendation potentially to the board. And then the board will meet on the 19th, I believe.
Yeah.
And if there is board action or a report out, that's when that would occur.
Great. Very good.
Correct. And I believe the committee will be able to decide today, later on in the meeting.
Would we be able to know the results of that committee comment before going to the board, or is that something that you would prefer to just give to the board and then make the board make the decision?
From a strictly legal standpoint, it does not rise to the level of a sunshine or a closed meeting. And so yes, I mean, we could not, John, this is mostly for you. We couldn't not tell them if they asked us, so.
That's correct. Okay. Thank you, Mark and other members. We wish that we could meet you all in person, but that's obviously not possible these days. But we do appreciate your appearance, and we appreciate your very thorough presentation, and we will take that into consideration later on. So I suppose you could stay and listen to all the rest of the meeting, but you probably have other things to do, and so we will continue with the meeting following your departure, if that's your decision.
Very good. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it, everybody.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Presentation. Okay. Let's have some conversation from members about this. I think you've had your questions answered. I think the situation is much clearer to us than it was previously because of the presentation, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I'll start. This is Michelle. I think when it was initially presented to us, I'm more of our policy has been, and I'm not a big fan of breaking our policy. But I think listening to this, I do think this is worthy of our support. I think it's a good thing for the community. I think it's a good thing for the area. And I don't think there's going to be a large burden on either the school district or the library, quite frankly. I feel like once it's completed, it'll be a good thing for us.
Thank you, Michelle. Other comments?
John, this is Ron. I think it's just generally a very, very worthwhile development, and with little or absolutely no cost whatsoever to the library. And another thing too, one thing about these TIF programs, especially for residential, it's not long before we're going to have a lot of tax-paying commercial real estate come in, you know, McDonald's and all that stuff. So I think in the long run, it more than makes up for any pennies we're potentially losing now.
Okay, thank you. Other comments?
Steve,
Steve?
my question is to Steve Potter. You made the comment that 65% is much different than the normal proposal we get. If we would agree to this, do you think that would encourage others who are going to follow with other development opportunities to realize that if they want it to work with taxing jurisdictions, they better ante up more than something similar to what we're getting here? Or would this set a precedent, I guess, is my question.
Yes, Steve, I believe it does set a precedent. The question is what precedent does it set? Does it set the precedent that now any residential TIF is fine by the library? Although we may clearly say, no, not any residential is fine. We have to have significant dollars in year one. And if we have significant dollars in year one, I mean, to the tune of 65%, then that would be something that we might be interested in supporting. I would say the lesson that we learned, and actually Steve and I had an email conversation about this a little bit and kind of talked a little bit, that once the camel's nose got under the tent in downtown Kansas City, they can't build a loft or an apartment building now downtown unless they get a significant abatement. They can't do any residential in downtown Kansas City now without an abatement. So the question becomes, what precedents do you set? But it definitely would set a precedent. What staff might suggest, I mean, I have said many times, and I will continue to say this, if we could get something like 50% pilot on every abatement, and all of our abatements only ran for 15 years, I might start running a library instead of fighting these things all the time, because my back of the envelope estimates would say, much like what Ron was saying, early money in year one would probably end up offsetting any losses that we would have in year 25. And the more important part is that we do get money in year one. Whereas right now, well, for example, I'm dealing with a residential TIF in the city of Independence right now, which is 8 years, 100%. We get no money in year one. And yeah, I mean, in that case, they're going to bring in 300, 400 people expecting library service with no money to serve them. This is different. The other element that I think comes into play with this one is the school district is already on board. The school district is the big fish usually in these sorts of negotiations. And if the school district is supporting this, our efforts will essentially be tilting at windmills. That's all they'll be. And so we'll just look like obstructionists. We'll look like we're not reasonable. I think staff's recommendation, as positive as this is, would be just to not object to it. I mean, the board policy is to object to these. I think if the board took a policy to not object to this, in much the same way that the board decided not to object to the John Knox Village abatement, then it's a reasonable way to keep our powder dry if that's what we need to do in the future, to do something really different in the future, but also to support a pretty reasonable project.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion? You've heard the recommendation of staff.
I move that we recommend to the full board that we do not take a position on this proposal.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we recommend to the full board a position that would not oppose this project. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Then we have approved that recommendation, and that will be taken to the board. So thank you very much. I'll just add a brief comment that I've been involved in these kinds of things on one side or another for 25 years, and this is one of the better projects I've seen when it comes to tax increment financing. I mean, it was very reasonably prepared, trying to meet as many of the needs as possible while still recognizing that this project is going to cost a lot more because of the fill situation that's involved there. And there have been other projects in the past that were treated much more generously than this one with regard to that fill situation. So I think your action is a good one, and that the recommendation is a good one to the board. Okay, any other further discussion or comment about that? All right, well, let's move on then to property liquidation. Again, a little bit of background. Hold on. Yeah, a little bit of background. At our previous meeting, you remember in the minutes that we approved earlier that we discussed, this was brought to us by the staff, and we considered all of the properties that we owned that might be eligible for liquidation. And we were considering it because it's the history that the Finance Committee always considers any liquidation matters of property. So that's why we were considering it rather than the Building Committee or in addition to the Building Committee. So it was recommended to us, and after lots of questions and conversation, we agreed with the staff that the Liberty branch and the Redbridge branch were the two that, for the time being, we felt were worthy of liquidation for a variety of good reasons. And we presented that to the full board, and the full board agreed to that essentially. And so then we said, well, okay, let's implement that and let the staff go out and try to liquidate these properties. And that's where we are now. And so the report that we have, the item that we have to consider is the recommendation of staff regarding what steps they have taken to liquidate. Anything else, Steve, you want to add to that?
Just a little bit more before we actually, unveiled the big information. So in terms of what we did after we got permission from the board to accept bids, Quan and I split up the duties. Quan took care of Liberty and I took care of Redbridge. But we basically did the exact same process for both branches. We had signs out at out on the property, essentially, for sale, real estate signs, put real estate signs in the windows, had brochures and flyers that we distributed. Mary Altman and Emily Becker, who works in our marketing department, did press releases and advertising. Mary also did an ad on a commercial real estate site for us. And then Quan and I also sent direct contact to everyone who had contacted us over the years interested in purchasing either building. Once all was, and then the next part that happens is not at all unusual. We inevitably will get a lot of people who will contact us saying they're interested in buying our building as soon as they discover we're moving out of it. And once we say, okay, we're serious now, we're ready to sell it, people don't respond. They don't, I should mention that we did, as part of our website, in fact, I think it's probably still up on our website. You can go to mymcpl.org/for sale. I think it is I'm not exactly sure what the URL was, but there was a website that's where we pointed all of our social media, boost posts and all of that. And on that, we put the appraisal We also put our ad sheets and all of that. Once all was said and done, I don't remember how many people actually talked with Quan about Liberty. I know Star Development started calling us actively right at the 11th hour, but they didn't bid. The only bid that we had on Liberty was from the Liberty School District, and they bid $750,000. There were no bids and no real interest voiced on the Redbridge building. The only person who did contact us was interested in tearing down the building and building a house there, which of course the city wouldn't allow. And so that's not, I don't consider that a legitimate request. We did get a call from Brandon Buckley yesterday. He was wanting to get an engineer in there so that he could look at the building more closely so that they could more accurately match the high bid. And, I explained to him that the high bid was zero. And so I don't think they're going to have a difficulty doing that. But with that said, that we definitely would, that I was going to talk with the committee today and find out what your pleasure is in terms of how to handle Redbridge. But let me back up to Liberty. Quan actually has the letter from the Liberty School District. It is obviously less than the appraised value. In both cases, I'm going to be surprised if we get the appraised value, even if we actively market these buildings. And so we do have to begin to balance the idea of the time value of money, the effort that we have, the amount that we're going to pay for brokers and advertisers and things like that. And will we get to a point where we end up spending money, spending the money essentially we're leaving on the table just to sell the building? We have to consider that. Certainly, I would suggest that part of that calculus and failure to do so, and the Great Recession of 2008, ended up with us holding the Smithville building for almost a decade because we didn't strike when the iron was hot. I think staff's recommendation, and we realize that we're leaving a lot of money on the table, but I think staff's recommendation would be to recommend to accept the Liberty School District's bid, even though it is significantly below the appraisal, in part because they're also a tax-supported entity. They're a strong colleague and collaborator with us. They kind of know what they're getting into. I mean, they understand. I mean, I've talked with Steve Anderson at the school district a lot about the condition of the building over the years. He knows what they're getting. And so we could liquidate that building quickly and get that cash on hand. In terms of Redbridge, I'm not sure what to do. I'm really not. I mean, we know Lane 4 is only interested in paying about, this is Liberty's about 25% or a little more than 25% less than the appraised value. Redbridge, Lane 4 is only interested in paying about $300,000, we think. And that's only about 30% of the appraised value. But on the other hand, we didn't hire a broker, we didn't advertise, we didn't do things. And I don't know when the right time is going to be to try to sell real estate or retail for a lifestyle shopping center when, people can't go out of their houses without masks and aren't supposed to be gathering. So I think it's going to be a hard time for us to sell Redbridge. And we may be holding on to that for quite some time, particularly if we're looking at getting anywhere close to the appraisal. So I'm sorry, it's a little bit of a rambling report, but bottom line, staff would recommend accepting the Liberty School District's bid on the Liberty branch, and we're open to recommendation on what the committee would like us to do with Redbridge.
What's the cost of keeping Redbridge open on a monthly basis?
Juan, do you have an idea on that, on how much it costs us to keep Redbridge open monthly?
I can give you some number. We did an estimate for Smithville.
Yeah.
Smithville is about $1,500 a month.
And Redbridge is about twice the size of Smithville, ballparking it. So about $3,000, would you guess?
Probably, little over 2,000 maybe.
Two to 3,000.
Yeah.
So two to $3,000 a month is our current expense for holding Red Bridge, correct?
Yes, that's our estimate, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. On Red Bridge, did I hear that do we have any kind of firm offer on Red Bridge from the developer?
No, I mean, I'm going to say no. I mean, Brandon and Owen Buckley have talked to us in the past. They continue to talk around a number in the neighborhood of $300,000, but they've never put that in writing.
Okay. All right. Okay. So discussion. You've heard the recommendation of the staff primarily concerning Liberty. I think that their recommendation is that we should move on Liberty and accept the only offer that we have on the property from the Liberty School Board for a lot of very good reasons. They're partners in many ways to us. And secondly, that we sit on Red Bridge further, but with the anticipation that we should try to get a firm offer from the developer for the reasons that have been given about why we didn't sell Smithville when we had the opportunity. And we thought it would be a better day tomorrow, and the better day has never come, and we've spent a lot of money in the meantime. So we have no firm offer from the developer at Red Bridge, but we could probably get one, and so I think that's a part of the staff recommendation. Am I misrepresenting that, Steve?
No, I mean, that's accurate, John. I mean, so yeah, I mean, we really have the two parts, the Liberty part and the Red Bridge part. And really, in terms of Red Bridge, I'm open to recommendation. If you guys want to tell us to go back and market harder, try to take out some more ads, boost posts, things like that. I mean, I can pretend to be a real estate agent for another month. I'm okay with that. Or if you want to tell us, really try to get Lane 4 to put something in writing, I can do that. If you want to tell us that you want us to hire a broker and try to go that route, we can do that. I'm open to recommendation. But I do think that I think the second thing that I said, trying to get Lane 4 to put something in writing beyond the fact that they have right of first refusal. We definitely should do that. We definitely should get an offer sheet from them, no matter what we do next.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I think the recommendation is fairly clear, and we're able to now discuss it. And I'll open the floor for discussion of this recommendation.
Well, my recommendation on Red Bridge is that prior to March of this year, Red Bridge was vibrant. Parking lots were full. The stores were full.
Yeah.
As with most areas, shopping areas, things have changed in the last several months. With the vaccination, I don't know in 6 months from now whether Red Bridge will be hot again. And we thought in January, February, our appraised value of that property was realistic, and to sell it for $300,000 seems to me to be leaving money on the table, especially since it's only cost us $2,000 a month in upkeep to keep it open. Mm-hmm. So I think your suggestion, Steve, of getting a firm offer from our friends from Owen, I think is fine, but I think I'd hold out. What's another 6 months at $2,000 a month? If Red Bridge, I still think is a hot market, assuming the pandemic goes away. So my gut would tell me that. Again, I'm not a real estate mogul by any means, but my gut tells me that Red Bridge went from nothing to to, I mean, we had 20% of the places in that shopping center useful. Owen and the Buckley folks came in, and now it was damn near 90%, 95%.
Yeah.
And they haven't really lost too many people, but clearly the parking lots are not near as full. The restaurants are not near as full. So I'm sure they're taking a hit, but I got to believe once the vaccination happens that Red Bridge is going to get hot again. And now Wonder Scope is open, and I just think that property is going to be worth some money if we can hold on until the pandemic goes away.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Perhaps we should take these on an individual basis and see if there's a motion on Liberty First. Is there such a motion?
I move to look at Liberty First.
Okay, and the move would be to recommend acceptance of the offer of the
Yes.
school board. Okay, so that there's a motion to recommend to the full board that we accept the offer of the Liberty School District. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, and the vote, the chair votes aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. That's one disposed of. Steve, the two Steves have made what I think is a recommendation regarding Red Bridge, that we hold on Red Bridge for the time being and revisit this in about 6 to 8 months when it's clearer that the pandemic is going to be reduced significantly by that time, and that will have positive impact on the value of the property, given the uptick in business for Red Bridge Shopping Center. So is there a motion to that effect that we would put it on hold for 6 to 8 months and revisit in that time, with the proviso that in the interim, part of the waiting period would be to gain a concrete offer, no matter what the size of it is, but a concrete offer from the developer of the Red Bridge Center, which has first right of refusal at the current time.
Well, I would add to that, John, that we would continue to market it. We wouldn't just sit on it, but we would continue to market it and try to. I mean, I don't know exactly the right ways to do this, but I mean, Red Bridge is I think has a lot of potential. So I would continue to market it. I'd certainly get the bid from Lane 4. And then in 6 months, we could look at it and see if things have changed. And, you know, maybe if the pandemic is still roaring, maybe we decide something different. But hopefully when we get the vaccinations, that our economy will pick back up, and we can sell it then.
Okay, that's a clarification, I think a good one, and so that's what's we're awaiting a motion on that. Did someone want to speak?
Well, I had a question about the recommendation. Do we need a recommendation to do that, or we just hold on to it?
We really don't need a motion. I mean, what I was really looking for was for some direction. I'm getting good direction. Basically what I'm hearing, and we can report this out, or John, you can report this out to the full board, that the committee advised me to continue to get a firm offer sheet from Lane 4 to target a 6-month time period to possibly look for a very active attempt to try to sell the property again. But between now and then, we could continue to market and sell and essentially do the same sort of things that we were doing. I mean, if somebody comes to us with an offer that's $750,000 or $800,000, then of course we would bring that to you all immediately.
Okay. Okay, good. I think that was an excellent clarification. And I think then that hearing no motion is fine, and we'll let it sit on the table for 6 months at least, and we'll see what happens at the end of that. With the understanding that we are going to continue to market the property, and with the understanding that we,
including inspection.
I'm sorry, someone's not muted, and with the idea that we will attempt to get a firm offer from the developer, so that we at least know as a part of the marketing effort what they're prepared to do. Okay, so is that clear enough? So the gist of this would be that we would make a recommendation to the full board that we proceed on Liberty, and then I will be happy to explain, that we have had discussions and we have a path forward for Redbridge, but we don't recommend any action immediately.
Yes, that makes sense to staff, and I think that we can definitely move forward with that. Quan was wanting me to make sure that I pointed out that there were a couple of conditions that the school board had for the Liberty branch. They want to be able to inspect it, and they had just really standard inspections, the standard sort of stuff that we would do as well if we were buying a piece of property. So staff didn't see any reason to really mention it because it was almost sort of a pro forma, but should mention that was mentioned in their bid. So
sure. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Ken, is that clear with the members? And are you okay with that? We don't need to take a vote. Is someone unclear about that? Okay, hearing none, the chair knows how to proceed on the 19th, and we'll move forward with those resolutions. Okay, let's move on to the final item on our agenda, and that is an update on the capital improvement program. I think this is something that we've coordinated a little bit with the building committee on this. We think it's time for us to make sure that we know how much is left to do. I mean, we've just done an absolutely terrific job. I'm amazed and impressed that we have been able to do as much construction and bring as much new library service and new facilities to the voters who gave us permission to do this in the shorter time that we've been able to do. I think everything has just worked wonderfully well, and I congratulate the staff on the effective way that we have managed this program up to date. But now it's time to take a look at what's left in the way of expenditures and what's left in the way of construction that needs to be done, and how much money is left to do that. Did I skip one there?
Yeah, you did. We'll do building committee first, and then we'll go back.
We'll go back to financial. I'm
okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I'll
No
go
worries.
back to financial position. So I'd like to just have some discussion about that. Steve, you may want to kind of lead us into that.
Okay.
I think you have a dashboard before you that we could look at as a way of getting into this.
Okay. And just to clarify, John, do you want to talk about building committee first or just the general financial position?
Let's talk about the building committee first, okay?
Okay. Yep. We'll do that first. So what we did, and I've shared this with Brent Schondelmeyer too, because what we did is we took the standard building committee dashboard that we've been using and that you've been seeing for many, many years, but we sort of redesigned it and tweaked it. And that's what's in front of you today. And this is what we're going to start using moving forward. One of the big differences that we have in this version versus the traditional version is that it's now put in order, not by work package order, but based on completion. And so everything that's in the black is done and closed out and completely finished. And everything that's in the green is pending in some way, that is either underway or that the design process is going on. Probably another important way to look at it is everything that's either in the green or the black has been contracted and is under the guaranteed maximum price. And the only things that are sort of left to do is the white part. So if you look at that in terms of percentages, a couple of interesting percentages to think about, that about 80% of the projects are either complete or underway, and about 74% of the project costs are either spent or essentially have been carved in stone through the guaranteed maximum price process. So we are definitely around the corner. We are, we can see the finish line with the building program. The other thing that's different about this dashboard is that we did add in some additional construction costs, or the soft costs. In the past, we've always had a soft cost line, but now we're actually showing all of those costs. The third thing that's different about this dashboard is that when you look almost directly in the middle, just a little bit below in the middle, you start seeing, you see remaining that we're talking about. So it's not just our construction, what our costs are, but what is remaining to be spent. And so once you actually look at, the amounts up above, the white projects that are up above, and you look at the projects, the soft costs that are associated with those, add them all together, the total all-in project cost was $113 million. That was hard costs, soft costs, technology, land acquisition, everything. And when you look down at the bottom, our total remaining costs, again, hard costs, soft costs, land acquisition, all of that is $55 million. And that we've got quite a bit, of course, out of that, 55 million is left, then that means that, about 60 million has already been spent and taken care of. Now, in terms of looking at the summary, we pay for this out of the O Fund Capital Projects Fund. And if you look at the O Fund fund balance, the fund balance right now is about $56 million. And if you look at the bottom line, the bottom line, it's $55.1 million is what we're looking at. Now, that sounds good, but there is actually something that we have to take into account. There are other expenses that are earmarked or allocated for the Capital Projects Fund beyond the capital improvement and replacement program. The Woodneath House is paid out of the Capital Projects Fund. There's an allocation for a new reading rocket that's in there. There's a couple of other things that are in there. So once you add up everything, that's sort of additional costs other than the Capital Project Fund, it was about, I think, $2.7 or $3 million. So when you added it all together, we sort of have outstanding bills of $57 million, and we have $56.1 million in the bank. Now that might sound a little scary, but it really shouldn't be very scary if you consider that the Capital Project Fund is not an annual budget. It's a multi-year budget. And the plan, and so we're not going to try to spend $50 million or $57 million in the next 12 months, or actually 6 months would be our case because we're halfway through the year. This is actually a multi-year project. The other thing is that if you act, we made a decision, this committee and the staff made a decision not to transfer some monies this year into our budget, that there was going to be a planned transfer from the operating fund to the capital projects fund to help with this fund balance. And we chose not to do that. Had we made that transfer, we would be right on target for where we needed to be. But we decided to leave that in the operating fund just to hedge our bet because we didn't really know what the year was going to look like. The other thing that we're going to find out here in a few minutes when we talk about the general financial condition is that there is an undesignated fund balance amount that is setting that's setting in our operating fund balance, that if we were to transfer that today, we would be balanced. We would have money to pay for every project and every earmark project that we would need. Staff would not recommend doing that because we still don't know what the overall condition of COVID-19 and the operations are going to be. But I would suggest that we're still on target. I mean, even with the decision to delay the transfer from operating into the capital projects fund by 1 year, I think we'll still have the fund balance necessary to pay all the bills that we have looking here. And also importantly, had we done the transfer this year as we expected to do, then next year we would have continued to transfer money into the capital projects fund, but that would have been money to maintain our buildings. So that in 5 or 6 years, when work package 1 is getting to be about 10 years old, we'd be looking at, replacing carpets, replacing roofs, fixing the parking lots, the types of things that we would need to otherwise do. So that's been delayed for about a year. But again, we still don't feel like that's going to be a significant problem in terms of making good on our commitments that we find in either the capital improvement and replacement program or the O3 capital project fund. If we were going to sum this up, I would say we're setting in really good shape today based on our expectations, making good on what we promised the voters, and being able to pay all of our bills.
Okay, Steve, did the numbers that you just cited include East Independence, which is a very large cost pending?
Yeah. Yes. All of the. So when you look at the dashboard, the new dashboard that we have, you'll see that there's in the bottom section there's Grain Valley, North Oak, East Independence, Lee Summit, and then Riverside, Harvey Jones, and Smithville, and those are basically the maintenance lines. But when you look up there at the East Independence line, you can see that the amount of money that we're holding for that is $6.4 million and $750,000 for land acquisition. So all of that money, just as an example for that project, is part of what gets rolled into that total construction remaining number. So yeah, absolutely, John.
Okay, well, I cite that one in particular because you will recall that we had quite a discussion when we opened the small library. Give me the name of it.
Farview.
Yeah, the Farview Library as sort of an experiment in finding out whether we could make the service, to give the service that was really needed in East Independence at the current time to the place where it's most needed, as opposed to building a much larger library for an area that is not yet fully developed and hasn't been committed to development at this point. So I think we need to keep that in mind, that this was an experiment, and we haven't even come close to completing the experience that we need in order to determine whether the Farview Library is sufficient for the foreseeable future, or whether we in fact do need to move forward on this rather large and expensive project for East Independence. So did I overstate that or misstate that at all?
No, I think that's a fair assessment of it. I mean, we went to the voters and promised them an East Independence branch. It can be argued that Farview is that East Independence branch, or not. It could be argued that this is just a small outpost that's part of North Independence, and we still need to look at something else. Katina Jones and I have actually been looking at our household penetration in the southeastern part of Independence and the eastern part of Independence in general. And one of the things that she told me is that that is some of our lowest household market penetration in the entire library district. So there is a suggestion that it is still potentially needed. But also we are making those assessments in the middle of a global pandemic too. So it's kind of hard to know if what we're reading is actually what we should be basing a 20-year plan on or not.
So it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear that in this fiscal year, we're probably not going to start a new East Independence Library project. Is that correct?
Yes, I could say that with certainty. I mean, because even if we decided we definitely want to go forward with the original plan that's in the capital plan and just consider Farview a bonus, we haven't seriously been looking at land acquisition yet. We haven't done any design work. All of that would take more than 6 months. So yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. One other question that I had was, excuse me. One other question was concerning the income from the way we financed the project. Quan, what is the current income on that, and was that included in the numbers that you just cited, Steve?
Yes. For the bond, we have a cash balance about $28 million at the end of December. And currently, we receive about $55,000 to $60,000 in interest. It will decreasing, with a reduced balance. That's $50,000 and more a month. All the past interest has been included. But one thing we have not included on the number is the property sales, like a Liberty,
right,
and other properties.
Okay. Yeah. So if we were to turn out to sell Liberty at the $750,000 price, well, then that $750,000 would be in the capital fund for use for these projects, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah. So that fund balance amount that I was quoting, that would be that's 56 million. It would be 56.7 million, for example, if we did that. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Other questions?
So if I understood Steve's answer to John, is that how much are we making on interest every year? Is that the $50,000 figure I hear?
50,000 is a month. Current.
A month.
Current interest based on the current balance. A year and a half ago was over $100,000 a month.
Right.
It depends on the cash balance.
So does that include the Natixis agreement?
That's most of them Natixis.
That is the Natixis agreement. Yeah.
Right.
So, worst scenarios, we put something off for a year and we're $600,000 better off.
Yes, that's the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying that as things set right now, and of course we have no idea what the future is going to bring us, but as things set right now, we're setting very good with all of this in terms of fulfilling our promises with the public, having the money to spend to fulfill those, not cutting corners to make sure that we're fulfilling those, and still being in a position where we can, maintain the buildings and, we're not cutting staff so that we can pay our bills. Everything, we're setting it in very good shape.
Okay, well, I thank you. I think that there's no action required on this item. We just felt that it was important that the Finance Committee have a discussion of it so that we would know and could answer questions of other board members if they were asked concerning where we stood with this. And so I think we stand very well with this, and that's what we wanted to try to ascertain from this discussion. So are there any other questions that people have or comments that you may have about the capital situation?
Yeah, just a general comment is that what Steve mentioned is absolutely spot on. We've got that accumulation of interest over that period, but that might also coincide, COVID out of the way, an incredible pent-up demand for construction. So we might come up with $500,000 of cash competing against unbelievably horrible competition. And in light of that, my thought is that it's incumbent upon us to have incredible reliance on the recommendation of the people who are most, have their feet on the ground and are facing all these issues, integrated with construction and custom user and everything like that. And that's the people in this building.
Right. Yeah, excellent comment. That's so right. We discussed all that right in the very beginning, that the quicker we could go, the better, the more we could save in construction costs, and the better, quicker that we could get service to our patrons. And that we have to still keep that in mind. We can't, we can't, out of concern, we really shouldn't be hoarding money because the hoarding may result in greater costs. That's what you're saying, basically, Ron?
Yeah, exactly. And I think especially the incredible connections between the financial perspective and other ones of equal or weightier concerns, such as, in Brent's committee and certainly in human resources, all of it comes together. And we're kind of like behind the scene how we pay for it. But what we pay for is, I think, pretty much at the proper direction by other people in the other committees.
Right. Okay, well, I think this has been a very useful discussion. I hope you feel it so, Steve. And I think unless there are other comments about this, I will report all this to Brent for the next meeting. I don't know when the next meeting of of his committee is scheduled, but I will report that to him, what our discussion was. And so is there further comment on this? Or should we move on?
No, I thank you for asking us to do it. It's always good. I mean, it's one of those things where I could see what was right in front of me, but actually stepping back and looking at this broader really was beneficial. So thank you for asking us to do it. And just FYI, I have been sort of, as we've been making these changes, particularly to the building committee dashboard, I've been updating Brent as I've been finding these things out too. So, John, it's not going to come as a surprise to him, but it'll be good for him to hear your report as well.
Okay. I'm sorry to skip an agenda item, but I guess that's what happens sometimes. Financial position, we discussed that it was incumbent upon the Finance Committee to sort of be in the vanguard of the full board concerning our financial condition. We've taken many steps to cushion our budget for unknown drop-offs in revenue. And so we want to continue to do that every meeting. We're going to have an item that will be our financial position. So, Steve, do you want to? I think you have some good news on this.
I think it's good news. What I want to do is we really took a deep dive on this and talked about specific accounts and things like that last time. So what I've done this time is I did a comparison. The most recent financials that I had was the closeout November 30th of 2020. And Quan's finishing up December right now, so didn't quite have that for our report. But if you look at this in terms of our three big categories, personnel expense, material expense, operation expenses, you can see that, if you just go to the bottom line, in fiscal year 2020, grand total, we had about 41% of our expenditures spent. This year, through November of 2021, we have 37.8% of our expenditures spent. And what that's amounting to is about a 1.9%, $1.9 million savings year over year. And that's due to just slowing things down. I mean, making sure that we're being very cautious with our expenditures, that we've been able to sort of balance between the service needs and the overall safety and all of that. And like we discussed last time, we're seeing savings in personnel. We should be seeing additional savings in personnel. But one of the issues that we're running into is that we do have a lot of long tenured employees who are retiring. And when they retire, our purchase of their accrual balances is actually having a negative impact on the personnel savings. But that's going to have a positive impact, because when we hire new people, they won't be accruing at such a high level. So in terms of expenditures, we've been watching things. We're continuing to do what we need to do. And we're about $1.9 million to the good right now. If we look at, now this is where I think the good news is, and it's on the next slide. And this is our revenues as of December 31st of this year. So looking year over year, and this is the thing that we've been very concerned about. What is going to happen when people actually have to start paying their property taxes? Are they going to be able to pay their property taxes, and will they pay their property taxes? So when we look at Jackson, Clay, and Platte counties, all three counties are ahead of this time last year in terms of cash, in terms of the amount that they paid. And so what we're looking at is that in 2020, we had about $16.8 million in revenue. In 2021, we have $18.7 million in revenue. And again, it's about a $1.9 million increase year over year. But to me, I think one of the things that was important was to try to figure out the rate of collection. And what I mean by that is, is the same percentage of taxes coming in this year as opposed to last year? Or is it a lower percentage of taxes coming in, or what is the ratio? So Quan did the math on that for me. And basically what we figured out is that at the end of the year last year, end of the calendar year last year, we had about 25% of our taxes had come in. At the end of the year this year, we had 27.6% of our taxes that had come in, which works out to be about a 10% increase in rate of collection. All of this, I think, is really good news. I don't think that we need to be, dancing in the streets quite yet. But the thing that I've been saying for a number of months now is that if we get to the end of the calendar year and all of a sudden we discover that we're $5 million behind on our tax receipts, then we're going to have a problem. Or if we're 4% behind in our tax collections, we're going to have a problem. Because what happens up till December, it's when all of those automatic payments come in. That's when people's escrow accounts, that's when we start seeing people with escrow accounts paying their taxes. Actually, there'll be a lot more of those coming in this month as well. People who are in a financially strong position will make their personal property tax payments, their car payments in December. And so our feeling is that if everything was okay, then we'd be at least the same rate this year as we were last year. And as you can actually see, we're actually, in terms of rate of collection, we're about 10% ahead this year as compared to last year. So that's very good news, not just in terms of more money, but also at a positive rate. Again, I think that rate's going to slow down as we go further into the year, as people are actually writing checks for their real estate and personal property. That rate's going to slow down, but it also slows down every year as we go further, as we go into January and February. So I think we can be optimistic, not cautiously optimistic. I think we can be optimistic that we're going to come pretty close to hitting our revenue targets, surprisingly, in this coming tax year. So that's what I wanted to report. I think it's very important for this committee to keep their eye on the finances and to continue to have me and Quan watching it very carefully. But yeah, 4 months ago, I'm not so sure. Well, 4 months ago, I kept telling my staff that we should be preparing for a 10 to 15% decrease in our, that we could see something as negative as that. And that's not at all what we're ended up seeing. So.
Okay. Well, that is indeed good news, and I'm pleased to hear it. I'm sure all the committee members are as well. And we do want to keep well aware of the progress of the tax collections as we go forward. Are there comments or questions concerning this matter? Okay. Are there any other?
I'd like to.
I'm sorry.
I think the minutes should show what we've been through the last year for any organization has been unique. We have never had a global pandemic before to manage through it. I just think our minutes should show that our committee congratulates Steve and his staff for doing a fabulous job on the financial side of it, but our mission is taking care of our patrons, and I'm so impressed with how we've worked so hard to keep our libraries open, to keep our staffs informed, to keep the morale up, to keep our website strong. I just think we've done a fabulous job in managing some really unique circumstances in a very, very positive way. So I think with your permission, our minutes should we should go on record as congratulating the staff for a job well done.
I completely agree. Okay, thank you, Steve, for that. That's really important that we do that, give that credit. Other questions or comments? Okay. What other business to come before the board or comments of members? Steve, I just have a question about the matters on property liquidation. Should those be handled at the board as closed session items or not?
They don't. My initial feeling is that they would not rise to the level of a closed session. I mean, the bid itself was in open session. There's only one bidder. Usually the sunshine law only protects us from us making bids out, not necessarily receiving bids in. So no, I think it can be an open session, John.
Okay, good. Thank you. Mm-hmm. All right. Other comments? I want to thank the board for all being in attendance and for your attention. We had a lot of business to cover, and I think we did reasonably well to cover it in the time allowed. And so I appreciate your participation. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. It's been moved and seconded